Now, does it matter if Keir Starmer's a bit dull? He made his big keynote speech of the election yesterday. I know what a keynote means. He's going to make loads of them. He was laying out his priorities and very much setting himself up as the complete opposite of everything Rishi Sunak stands for. Have a look.
Whose side are you on? Who do you hold in your mind's eye when you're making decisions? Now, everything I have fought for has been shaped by my life. Every change I've made to this party has been about a cause. The answer to that question, the only answer, the working people of this country delivering on their aspirations, earning their respect, serving their interests. So I make this promise. I will fight for you.
His critics said that was all a bit dull, forcing Starmer to insist that no, he has got the energy for the campaign. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister responded to the speech on social media saying, not a single plan for the future. Our country needs bold action, not waffle. Well, yeah, waffle, boring, dull, whatever. Maybe we need dull now, do we, Gemma? Just thinking about Boris Johnson went down in flames a bit.
Exactly. We need sensible. Look, admittedly, he's not the best orator in the world, but I don't care. And, you know, a part of being the leader is to inspire, lead, sort of govern your party more than anything, and also explain to the country why you're taking the steps that you are. I believe that we now need a period where the culture wars are dialed down, where you've got somebody who is across their brief. We've got somebody who does the reading. We've got somebody who...
It's like Gordon Brown type of figure.
Yeah, just somebody sensible.
But the thing is that if you look at Gordon Brown or John Major, they're regarded as very bad prime ministers.
Well, I don't know why, compared to Johnson, Truss and Sunak. I mean, we've had
maybe because they were dull. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think the problem with Keir Starmer isn't that he's dull. I think he's a duplicitous, two-faced lie with no principles. That's Keir Starmer.
What, because he's changed his policies?
What, as opposed to Boris Johnson?
Well, no, we can't always do it by comparison. Let's just stick on stuff.
Yeah, I don't know genuinely what sort of Keir Starmer that we'll get in Downing Street. Are we going to get the Tony Blair second coming, or are we going to get the guy who supported Jeremy Corbyn to become Prime Minister twice? I do not know. It's my job. I follow everything he says every day. I don't know what sort of Keir Starmer we're going to get. So this is the Ming Vase thing that the commentators speak of. And I agree. Yeah. I think we're all holding our breath. But that is because of papers like yours. The trouble is that the minute he says anything at all, even something quite moderate, it gets snatched and weaponised.
So his Green Deal is an example. He was going to do, what was it, a 28 billion Green Deal. That was the big policy. He dropped it.
Yeah. Now,
isn't dropping it quite a mature thing to do? Because it was getting torn to shreds.
If there were one or two examples, maybe. But he became Labour leader with 10 promises, and he's broken, I think, 9 of them. Including renational. Well, the one I think he promised to provide effective opposition to the Tories, which, you know, even I will say, given the polls, you can argue he's kept that one. But renationalising water, mail, rail, also defending open borders with the EU.
They are going to do that, but in a better way.
No, he's promised. Well, he's promised not. Well, unless you're saying Labour are going to promote open borders with the EU, in which case,
I think the point is he was going to go back to some sort of customs union or free movement,
defending free movement with the EU, and he's now taking that off the table. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, this guy has lied through his teeth before to win the Labour leadership. Why on earth should we believe he isn't doing that now?
He is opposing the dirtiest government who have given out contracts to their mates, who we've got sewage, I was about to say something else, in our water, and the country is in a state.
So literally the dirtiest.
There is a part of me that hopes he is just doing anything to get power, and then we'll see. Oof. I do agree with you that we don't know.
You can't do it like that, though. You can't do anything to get power. That ends up in disaster.
No, I know. Listen, I don't approve of it. I don't agree with it. The jury's out for me. I'm not affiliated to Labour. Personally, I'm going to be voting tactically. I think it's a miserable state of affairs. But I think if you look at the man that he is, it doesn't tally with some of the things that he says, and it is a bit of a mystery. I quite agree.
But it's odd, too, as you approach an election, to jettison your policies. Usually it goes the other way.
But then you've got to be pragmatic as a politician.
You know, I totally understand.
And if you are inheriting nothing, basically, scorched earth, perhaps it's wise to say, caution,
well, they had a terrible thing, and I remember 1991, John Smith was the Labour shadow chancellor, Neil Kinnock was the leader, and they decided to do what they called a shadow budget. And they did all the numbers on the budget. This is where we're raising taxes. This is what we're doing. And it caused a disaster for them. And they lost the election. Yeah. And they worked out from that, never be too clear on what your policies are.
And you've got to get in and see. They don't even have access to the Treasury yet. They don't know what they're inheriting.
That's the excuse.
I suspect it's pretty bad. You know what? Characters in politics. Trump. Johnson, Putin. I mean, like,
yeah, you don't.
No, okay. No, I mean, I'm not. Okay.
All right.
What I'm saying is, can we have boring for a while?
Yeah, okay, but that's the point of this item. Is do we want boring for a while? William in London, do you want it to be boring for a while?
Hi, Jeremy. Yeah, I don't think whether boring or flamboyant is. I think that's a red herring, really. I mean, it's a matter of competence. But I would agree with Christian, for the one and only time it's ever going to happen in my life, that Keir Starmer has reneged on every promise he ever made. He completely lied to the Labour Party membership in order to get elected. He has acted in a completely, in a way, a dictator would, and him and his acolytes, in terms of sidelining left of centre constituency Labour parties.
You're talking about Diane Abbott and Corbyn and all that?
No. I'm talking about blocking candidates that were favoured all around the country, left of centre candidates, and parachuting in the right of centre. I mean, I've got to say it, red Tories.
Well, I mean, in the end, the template. Remember, the Tories have got Thatcher, so they always go back to Thatcher. Yeah. And Blair probably is still the template for Labour, William. However strange that may be.
Well, Blair, a lot of people have to wash their mouths out with soap and water whenever they use his name. Yeah, I know,
but he won 3 elections.
Because of plenty of other things. He did win 3 elections, but with Tory votes. You have to remember the Iraq War. We only went to war with Iraq because it got passed through Parliament because of the Conservative Party voted with the right-wing Labour Party.
But this is the problem, William.
Go on quickly, William.
I agree with you, William. I would like to hear some proper progressive one. And we just don't have that, do we? And it's so depressing. But he needs conservative votes to win.
You had it with Corbyn. You had
it with Corbyn.
You had a proper left-wing party and they crashed. You know. But that's
you win with the centre ground.
Maybe Thatcher won on the right, and
there is an argument, which is that they are so far ahead. This was the great election opportunity to shed some votes at the periphery, but still have a bold left-wing offering and end up with a majority.
But you don't know if they'd be as far ahead if he'd done that.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they seem to be pursuing an enormous landslide with which they will do apparently very little.
Well, no, but they could do, with an enormous landslide, they can do what the hell they want.
Well, they can. I just think it's a very undemocratic way to go about it.
He's fighting fire with fire, isn't he? He's doing what he has to do.
And when Thatcher got in, there was that period where it was a sea change because the country was sort of exhausted by what had gone before. And I feel like historically we're at that point again. And he's slightly going to win because they're so awful.
But Labour sea changes last a lot less time than Tories, right? Attlee and
I think
Wilson.
Sea changes generally are... They're tightening. So nobody thought Starmer would have a chance at this election. They thought Boris has got 80-seat majority. That's it for 10 years. It was barely it for 10 months.
Blew it up.
Well, the Tories blew it up by getting rid of him.
Right, Peter in Wolverhampton. Hi.
Hi, Jeremy.
Do you want boring for a while?
Well, Keir's so boring that I forget what he's saying while he's actually speaking.
Yeah, well, I don't want to comment on that, but I mean, it may not matter, Peter. It may not matter. If we want entertainment, we can have Taylor Swift.
No, but I think he's actually exciting because he's beating the Tories like Christian,
Thank you. Paul in Greater Manchester, hi.
Hi, Jeremy.
You happy with boring?
Yeah. Well, I think it's quite strange that everyone's saying Keir Starmer's boring, because on the other side, you've got Rishi Sunak, who's boring, you've got Oliver Dowden, who's even more boring, and you've got Jeremy Hunt, who's a snooze fest. At least we've got Angela Rayner, Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer. We've got 2 women in the top 3. So who's the most boring, Labour or the Tories at the top?
You're right. Angela Rayner is not boring. For some reason, I think Rishi Sunak is not boring, but I don't know why I think
he's profoundly irritating.
Yeah, but irritating isn't boring. I mean, I think you've got to go some to be boring when you've got a microphone and a lectern and people are listening to you. But you're right. Maybe you're right. The Labour Party isn't boring, Paul. That's a good point.
And why do we never talk about how boring Oliver Dowden is? Nobody even knows.
Listen, we're not doing a whole item on Oliver Dowden, Paul. I'm sorry. I mean, I don't know how.
Well, you proved his point.
Well, it really is. No, he is Deputy Prime Minister, actually, amazingly. So there we go. Paul, thank you. It's a good point. There's a good point.
Very good point.
So, yeah, maybe that. But the Labour thing is just got to bring it home. You've got to win as big as you can, and then, you know, bring in the policies later.
And then we find out what we've been lumped with for 5 years.
Yeah, but the Tories have done the same. They've brought in policies after elections that we didn't know about before.
Well, primarily during COVID, yes, and then to deal with the fallout from that. I mean, that was once in a generation. And Rwanda, I mean, the small boat crisis didn't exist in 2019.
They were voted in on levelling up. Yes. Levelled down.
Well, yes, because there was this thing called COVID, which sort of blew up the economy for 3 years. And we spent, what was it, £400 billion keeping people in their jobs and in their homes and with food on the table. You know, I think the Tories, unfortunately, had the worst hand of all time going into 2019. Now, you say part of that was Brexit, that was their own hand. But to then have a pandemic and then whilst we're trying to recover, a war in Europe, you know, it was the worst possible thing.
Sunak didn't insure our debt. Like, when he was Chancellor. That was a profound mistake.
Let's go to Denise in Manchester. Denise, are you thinking we need to be bored now? It's been too exciting recently.
Absolutely not. Keir Starmer is not boring. I'm so fed up of the right putting out that he's weary, sleepy, boring. Is that all they've got against Keir Starmer? Is that the only thing?
Wait a minute. Very sleepy, I didn't say, but dull and quite straight. Yeah.
And on Sunday, Trevor on the politics show called him a sneaky lawyer.
A
shifty lawyer. I mean, I'm so fed up of people putting him down. Sunak. Ask the question, is Sunak boring? Was Truss boring? Was Boris Johnson a bore?
That's the point.
Yeah,
that's the point, Denise, is that we'll take Truss as an example. Let's say Truss's premiership arguably was one of the most exciting in recent years. There was something every day. It doesn't mean it was good.
My mortgage hike is boring.
Please don't use the word exciting. It wasn't exciting.
Boring isn't necessarily bad. I don't want the person who's handling the country's nuclear defences to be a bit of a character or an eccentric. I want them to be excessively dull.
Well, please say that. When people just hear boring, they think, oh, well, I'm not going to vote for somebody that's boring.
Well,
listen to what is going to do for the country.
OK. I mean, I'm not when I talk about
people calling him boring.
All right. I can see that's upset you. Did you hear his speech yesterday?
That me. Because it all seems to be about Keir Starmer. It's about the party and what they're proposing to do to help this country out of the blooming mess that the Tories have put us in. OK,
Denise, thank you so much. Good, passionate phone call. Later, it's the papers and everything else. Find out which popular lads mag is making a return. That's not boring. After the break, there are...